Hello, welcome back to Learn Economy. In this video, we are going to explain the various theories of public goods. I have already discussed what public good is, its characteristic features, its relationship with the externalities, market failure, etc. So, I hope you have watched those videos which explain all these things. If you have not, I'll be providing the links of the same in the description box. Having said so, let's come to the video. In this video, what I've done is that I will be explaining the voluntary exchange model as well as the Samuelson model. The first clear formulation of a theory of public expenditure was made by the policy interpretation given by Wicksell and Linder. In this formulation, individual would bargain over the level of public goods supply simultaneously with the distribution of costs between them. The bargaining equilibrium is considered to be Pareto optimum. In addition, each individual pay a price in terms of private goods which is equal to the marginal willingness to pay of that person. Coming specifically to voluntary exchange model, actually it's an approach to the analysis of provision of public good which would seek to establish conditions under which these goods could be provided on the basis of some agreement, and this agreement is considered to be unanimous. This may be contrasted with the generally observed agreement or arrangement that the provision of public good is financed by compulsory taxation and not by any kind of voluntary agreement. The voluntary approach was given by Wicksell, who argued that each public good should be financed by a separate identifiable tax. Also, the unanimous agreement of all members of the society should be required to decide on the amount of the good to be supplied. At the very outset, individuals would be aware of their allotted share of any tax to be levied. The problem would then to be left to decide the level of provision. It was extended, this kind of analysis was extended by Linden, who presented a model in which both the share of taxes as well as the amount of good were open to debate. As per the Linden's model, equilibrium requires each individual to pay a particular tax rate which is just equal to the individual's marginal utility from consuming that good. This is shown for a two-person community model. Here there are two persons, person A and person B, who has a quantity, and in the community there is a quantity of public good which is given by some amount, okay, some limit, and if the public good is the quantity of public good, here it is measured along the x-axis, and share of tax paid by the individuals is measured along the vertical axis, and A share of taxes increases from bottom to up or top, and B's share of taxes increases from top to bottom. Okay. The schedule DA indicates the amount of good A would wish to demand a different level of tax share, and A's share of cost goes down as it does that, as it is made to go down, his desire for good increases, right? And DB's preferences is indicated by his on wish his share of cost falls. As this happens, preferred quantity of good would increase. So whenever there is an increase in the tax rate, preference for good would come down. Whenever there is a reduction in the tax rate, preference for good would go up. The Linden equilibrium involves producing Q1 of good with tax shares as indicated at point S. In Linden model, we could see that public goods are provided in a manner which ensures everyone gains from the provision. That is, provision of goods is always Pareto improvement. That is, if you move from one point to another, at least one person would be made to better off without influencing the condition of the other person. I mean, the other person would still be better off, and the person who is better off in the past would not get affected as a result of the betterment of the other person. That's it. Linden's analysis adds the condition that an individual consumes the most preferred or the optimal amount of public good given the share of his tax. Despite the appeal of the model, there are difficulties when you come to the application of this model. In particular, you could see that the problems of reaching unanimous agreement and the possibility that individuals will not indicate true preferences undermine the usefulness of the model. Let pi ij plus k be the price that individual I pays for the public good k, and let pj plus k be the producer price or the marginal cost. Then the Lindell equilibrium would be characterized if you satisfy the condition sigma I pi I to k is equal to pk into k equal to j plus 1 so on plus j plus k. Thus, at first glance, this concept of Lindell equilibrium seems to establish an analog to the competitive market for private goods with some interesting difference, that the prices should differ from one individual to other depending upon the marginal willingness to pay, because each person would be having some marginal willingness to pay which would be different from person to person, right? And this also tries with other notions of benefit theory of taxation, especially some older notions of benefit theory of taxation, according to which taxes were seen as payments for public goods to be levied in accordance with the benefits each individual derive from them. There's an interesting duality between the definition of private good as well as public good on one hand and the properties of equilibrium prices on the other. In terms of quantities, for private goods, the sum of the individual quantities consumed would add up to the quantity produced, while in the case of public goods, individual consumption would be equal to the aggregate production. In terms of prices, you could see that for private goods, each consumer price equals the producer price, whereas in the case of public goods, each consumer price add up to producer case. So that's it in the case of public good and private good. One crucial difference exists between Lindell equilibrium and competitive equilibrium for private good. When in the case of private good, individuals facing the given prices have some clear incentive to reveal their true preference by equating their marginal rate of substitution to relative prices, at least if the economy is sufficiently large relative to the individual. So there are some differences when it comes to public good. Without paying, the individual is excluded from enjoying the benefit of consumption in the case of private good. But in the case of public good, this is not so. We have seen that it's a good which has got the characteristic features of non-rivalry and non-excludability, right? So even if the person is not paying, you cannot exclude that person from consuming that particular good. So the individual has the same quantity of public good available to him whether he pays or not. That is not a matter here. Even if he is not paying, he can avail the service of public good. This problem is likely to be particularly so when the number of individuals is large, since his own contribution will then make little difference to the total supply of the public good. The equilibrium of Lindell equilibrium is not compatible with the individual incentive to reveal preferences truly. For this reason, Samuelson has referred to the individual Lindell prices as pseudo prices and to equilibrium as pseudo equilibrium. In this case, one would conjure that because all individuals have the same incentives to understate their true marginal willingness to pay, Lindell mechanism would result in equilibrium levels of public goods supply which would be too low relative to the optimum level. So there is really no need to associate the problem of preference relevation with this kind of procedure alone. As on the other extreme, you could see that one might think of the case where individuals are asked to state their preference on the assumption that cost to them is completely independent of their stated willingness to pay, but there is a positive association between this as well as the quantity supply. Then there would be incentives to aggregate the willingness to pay and consequent tendency towards the oversupply of goods. Thus, the general problem which arises is how to design a mechanism that is easy helping to allow the decision maker to implement the efficiency condition. And the development of theory by Samuelson which is known as a modern theory of public good. It can be counted as a breakthrough in the theory of public finance. In these two very short papers, Samuelson partly solved some central problems in the normative theory of public expenditure. First of all, how can one define goods analytically that are consumed collectively, that is, for which there is no meaningful distinction between individual and total consumption? Secondly, how can one characterize an optimal allocation of resources to production of such goods? And thirdly, what can be said about the design of an efficient and tax system which will finance expenditure of public sector? What is required is a satisfactory theory of market failure, right? We know that in certain cases, especially in the case of public goods and all, market fail because market cannot capture the cost and benefit involved uh, in using public good in terms of price. So as a result, since the market is not able to capture the cost and benefit in terms of price, there is a failure of the market. So criteria for just taxation had developed independently for the analysis of expenditure side of the public budget. Samuelson formulation is considered to be a great leap forward, presenting an integrated solution to all the three problems which we have told about. So come to the Samuelson model. Uh, the main aim of this model is considered to be helping to derive the condition for optimal allocation of these kinds of good. I mean, the public as well as private in the economy. It is worth emphasizing that these terms do not prejudge the respective task of the private and public sector. The analysis at this particular stage is considered to be institution free and could be best considered as representing the problems of a planner who knows the production possibilities of an economy. We know that an economy produces not only public good, it also produces private good. So we are just concerned about an economy which is producing both public as well as private good. And the preference of the consumers and his own ethical values should also be considered here. The nature of the two types of good are defined by the equation which will give the relationship between the individual and aggregate consumption. For private good, the total quantity consumed is equal to sum of the quantities consumed by the individuals. For public good, the corresponding relationship is one on equality between individual and total consumption. Individual preferences represented by utility function are often defined over the quantities consumed of private as well as public good. The usual answer is that here, if you are asked a question, are there actually any good which could be described by the definition given in 2? That means the definition of public good. Here you would see that in some cases there are pure public good like national defense, which could be indeed there exists some consumer benefits which could be directly related to the total availability of good in question, and the consumption benefit of any one individual not depend upon the benefit enjoyed by others. This property of public good is usually referred to as a non-rivalry in consumption. And however, many goods which you consider as public turn out to be uh, rivalry. I mean, in the sense that any good could be considered as public good if it satisfies the condition of both non-rivalry and non-excludability. Even if it is rival, you cannot consider it as public. A road may satisfy the condition of public good as long as the traffic is low, but when there is a high intensity or when there is a congestion in the road, you cannot consider it as a public good because there is some kind of rivalry condition existing there. Several studies have been devoted to the analysis of impure public goods, combining in the same way some properties of private as well as public good in the original Samuelson definition. Samuelson formulation does not assume that the benefits derived from the supply of public good are same and the availability even though the availabilities are same. Neither does it assume that the benefit from public good are independent of the quantities consumed of private good. Elements of rivalry in the road congestion example may be captured by introducing externalities in consumption of private good. So you can see that the original Samuelson formulation offers a great flexibility of interpretation. It could be provided with an answer to the first or the main problems. We just turn now to the problem of optimality of resource allocation, and then we link it to the Pareto optimum criteria. Since the interesting special feature of the model are on the consumption side only, we assume that the condition for efficient production are satisfied. We are not looking into the production aspect, so that the production possibilities of the economy could be summarized in the transformation or production possibility equation. Here you can see that f x0 till xj plus I till xj plus k is equal to 0. The problems of Pareto optimality may be formulated as of all allocations satisfying equation 4 and allocation which maximizes utility for consumer 1 given the arbitrary but fees per utility levels of all other consumers. Samuelson solution or the solution offered by Samuelson could be considered to be two-dimensional if you are going for a graphical representation. Therefore, we begin with the case where there are two consumers and one private good as well as one public good. There are two goods, one private and one public, and two consumers are there. In good, the upper panel of figure, we have drawn the production possibility curve as well as the indifference curve corresponding to the level of utility for consumer 2. Since there are two curves intersect, there would be some number of allocation which would satisfy all the constraints. The lower panel, a curve show consumption possibility of consumer 1 and corresponding points of intersection in the upper panel. Just understand this. Here it must be the case of two consumers or two individuals consuming the same amount of public good, while one's private good consumption is equal to vertical difference between the production possibility curve and two's indifference curve. The best allocation from one's point of view is then be given by the tendency between highest attainable indifference curve and the consumption possibility in the lower panel. This determines the optimal supply of the public good and consumers consumption of the private good as well as the consumption of the consumer in the case of both the goods. The slope of the consumption possibility would be equal to the difference of the slope of two curves, and the tangency point could be characterized in terms of marginal rate of substitution and the marginal rate of transformation. The sum of the marginal rate of substitution should be equal to the marginal rate of transportation between the private good and public good. Since the private good may be taken as a numeric commodity, sum of the marginal willingness to pay for public goods should be equal to the marginal cost of production. Here the intuition is very much clear. An extra unit of supply would benefit both consumers simultaneously. To find out the marginal benefit, if we have to take the sum of the marginal benefits accruing to all consumers. That means that problem 2 is solved. The Samuelson theory of public good has it could be considered to be decisive having some decisive influence for the theory of public expenditure. One of the results for this is that the normative theory of public good has become much more satisfactory from a theoretical point of view than a positive theory. This state of affairs could be considered to be unavoidable. The normative theory has little need to model the institutional details. So a positive theory, but on the other hand, these must model the institutions, and there is no single institution corresponding to competitive market in the case of private good. Moreover, development of positive theory of public good must necessarily be closely tied to the progress of positive theory of public sector and the behavior of the public sector. And it would be very much interesting to see whether this theory can be developed to provide models which are considered to be both realistic as well as simple. So that's all. I welcome you to my Telegram group and Telegram channel to discuss your doubts. And please like, share and subscribe to this channel for more video, and thank you for watching.